Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twillow Talk. I'm Tanis Coughlin. I'm with Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy, and I am joined by my beautiful co-host.
Yeah, Jennifer Jurkofsky with My Holistic Self.
Awesome. And we come on every week and we do authentic conversations. So what we do usually is we will pick a card from this deck here, Diana Cooper and Greg Stewart Wisdom Cards, and then have a conversation. So we're happy to have you all here. It's great to see you on, and let's pick a card.
Okay.
How was your week? Ooh, this is a good one. All right. Our topic is balance. Balance. It says, a steady mind is clear and effective. A balanced life results in contentment, health, and a flow of inspiring creative ideas. If you are on a treadmill, your mind becomes dull. Sorry, picture of somebody on a treadmill with nothing in their head. I was like, when you bring your social, family, spiritual, and work life into equilibrium, new choices and opportunities arise. Your guidance is to watch where you focus your attention and consider how to attain more balance. This will bring you vitality, prosperity, happiness, and a sense of spiritual well-being. And our affirmation this week is, I bring all aspects of my life into balance.
Nice.
So, balance is our topic. So, the scales come to mind whenever I think balance, of course. But, there are more than two areas to balance.
Well, and what's interesting is, for me, it was actually getting scales that came to mind, only because it's not equal necessarily.
Right.
Right? And so the idea of balance doesn't mean that everything has to have an equal space or an equal amount of time or equal attention. So I think that balance is a very unique thing for each individual.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, because, we can't spend as much time with our family necessarily as we do at work, because that just wouldn't necessarily be feasible for a lot of people, right? Because we have to work full-time hours in order to make enough money to live and stuff. So that wouldn't be feasible to create balance in that way, in equal proportion. So that's a good point. So how do we make sure that we're doing enough for everything and that we still have enough for that, the downtime?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, of course, what comes to mind is from the human design perspective, right? Our designs are all different. And so what balance looks like for each of us is going to be very different based on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so generator, which is, 70% of the population, balance might be, equally distributing time and making time for everything because it's much more of a doing energy type, right? And they can go.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for a non-energy type, that balance might look very different. We need a lot more downtime, a lot more quiet time, a lot more reflection time, and a lot less doing time in order to really feel balanced. Right? So I think that, a balance, as much as, we talk in coaching and things like that about, making sure you have equal time for this and that, it's not always what's really in balance for any given person.
Mm-hmm. I think, from my perspective, I think what I often do will be that, sorry, technical issue. We actually have someone on here who is bringing up, and her name is Catherine. Hi, Catherine. Balance is also ever changing as we're moving through our day and our journey. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that I think that for me, it's trying to make sure that I do something for each area almost every day. For me, even if it's a little thing, like it doesn't have to be equal time, but doing something for each thing helps me to feel like I've like a touch point in each area of my life kind of thing, you know? So like making sure I do like my meditation for me, and then making sure I do at least one task, you know, for work, like one thing for the house or for the family in that sense, right? That kind of thing. So that's sort of how I work it, because then I make sure that I'm being productive in all those areas as well. So it depends whether you're equating productivity to that, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think the balance can come from so many areas, because now you're talking about all of the the different aspects of the world around you, right? And then there's also balance in, like you had said, the meditation piece, but balance in our eating, balance
Yeah,
in our exertion of energy, balance in our attention, right? And so there's so many different ways that we can experience balance and that we can fall into imbalance.
true, true. Hi, Shauna. So Shauna's joining us saying divine timing. It's great to see you too. And thank you for the birthday wishes. It was my birthday last week. So awesome. Yeah, you're right. It is about finding balance within each of those areas as well. I mean, a balanced diet, it's probably one of the most common things that we talk about, right? Is having that balanced diet. And that would be and that, again, it's the same sort of thing, right? When you look at, for instance, the Canadian Food Plan, right? Or the Canadian Food Guide.
Right.
It's the proportions are not equal, but you have proportions from each. So it's an interesting topic, really, when you look at it that way, right? It's not about
Yeah.
equal time or equal energy for each of those. It's about allocating the appropriate time and energy.
Yeah. And recognizing that what's appropriate for me might not be appropriate for you, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yes.
right? And so balance is also accepting when we're not the same and allowing for that to also ebb and flow and move, right?
And being forgiving of ourselves when we're not quite in balance, or when we do something that's a little bit out of balance for us.
Yeah.
You know. Welcome, Estella. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, it's because it's not, it doesn't help with balance to start to be hard on yourself. You know, just like, if you're hard on yourself for eating a cookie, when you're looking at balanced diet, does one cookie make it out of balance? But if you get hard on yourself for something with it, then you might eat like the whole bag if you're an emotional eater, which then you would be out of balance. So it can create more issues if you're not forgiving of that the ebb and flow, like you were talking about, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I find too that, you know, we we have a society that determines what balance should be and doesn't take into consideration the unique design that we all are and how we are all different.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we define what's balance for us by what, others are saying or doing, or, what we're being told, then we're not necessarily in balance, even if we're following that, right? Like the food guide is a
Yes.
perfect example, because it says that we have to have so much of this and so much of that and so much of this, but depending on our own personal health system, that might not be the case,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that it's also a really important piece to, know thyself. and
Well, and
to
isn't that the big spiritual journey? Know thyself. That is the spiritual journey. Healing is all about self-knowledge.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and balance in that sense, then when it comes to, the spiritual journey, it's really even bringing it deeper into, how much of what I experience in my day is my mind kind of dictating and moving and pushing me through. How much of it is surrender? How much of it is guidance? And where do I want to be in that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I mean, it's not to say that there isn't a place for the mind to do things. I mean, the mind gets us through a lot of the monotony and all of that kind of stuff, and it, does all the basic tasks, and we don't think about breathing. We don't think about, a lot of the functions. But how do we find balance in moving us towards who we want to be and how we want to be in the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And delving into that is kind of what we do with coaching stuff, right? So how do you want to be, and because it's programming part of it too, because if you're not like what rules are you judging yourself from? Are you judging yourself from what other people feel or what you feel? Like what are your values? What does your soul want you to do, or your heart want you to do? Or is it, well, I know I should be doing this because that's what society, you brought up society norms and stuff, and that's a lot of us are programmed to just do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And not really delve into what is it that we really, what do we really want? Like what brings that passion? Because passion is another aspect that bringing that into your life, right? That creative aspect of self, whether it's, a hobby that you love to do, or, whether it's spending time with friends and family, like having a passion for something is what part of what keeps us going. And so if we're just going about doing, and I guess that's what it was meaning when it was talking about the treadmill, right? When you're just going along doing what you're supposed to be doing and not looking at what really brings you passion,
Mm-hmm.
then we do get stuck on that treadmill.
Yeah. Well, I think again, this brings it back to balance, right? Because if we also get too caught up in a desire, in a passion, and we lose, the ability to see anything else in our experience, that's also out of balance,
True.
right?
Yep.
So I love that it really does come into every aspect of our experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's interesting. So in therapy, I like to use acceptance and commitment therapy as kind of a foundational model. And one of the things that is a part of that is what's called the life map. And it's a 4 quadrant thing, and it just kind of looks at, okay, what you were saying about the values, right? This piece, who or what is really important to me, right? And then it goes into what are the thoughts, what are the feelings, what are the internal experiences that come up for me when, when I want to move towards that, but that block me from doing so. And
Mm.
then we look at, okay, what is my response when I have those internal, experiences? What do I do to avoid having them? What do I do that, to get out of having those experiences? Because ultimately that's what ends up moving me away from what's important to me, right? And then what can I do differently, right? So it's not about necessarily like getting rid of the thoughts and feelings that you're having, but kind of being able to stay with them and honor them, and then work through them in a way that we change how we're responding to them, right? And so when we think about it in the sense of balance, how often do we have something that's important to us, but we move away from it because our ability to sit with things that are not comfortable is so out of balance from our desire to have things that are comfortable.
Yeah. That comfort zone thing, right? When you're in that must be it, it's such a strong human desire to be in the comfort zone or status quo that we have a hard time doing stuff outside of that. Like change is really difficult for people. And so going out of that status quo it requires us to change. It requires us to push ourselves or to do behaviors that are not our usual programmed behaviors sometimes.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, when you look at, we look at the Enneagram, we look at human design, we look at any of these kind of things, and they look at the conditioning that makes us be something that we're not, that forms these defense mechanisms, and that forms these views, all of the shoulds that we think that we have to show up for, that aren't really for us and aren't really how we feel and aren't true to our authentic selves, right? And so, again, there are times where, and kind of going back to the life map, because this is where I was going to go with that. And there are times where people go, oh, well, if I'm moving away from what's important to me, that's bad. And if I'm moving towards what's important to me, that's good. And it's not that it's necessarily good or bad. Like, there are times where we have to do something that might not move us in the direction we want to go, but it's for our safety, or it's for what's necessary in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's about balance. If I have to do that, okay, but then how do I bring myself back, right? How do I balance back? And so, we look at the conditioning and we look at the experiences that we have, and it's like, okay, yeah, I've had this defense mechanism has served me for a time, it's had a purpose, but now how do I balance back? How do I come back into balance with who I am and who I want to be?
Mm-hmm. And we're all very different.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, are we having some audio issues? We have a comment. Is it just me, or is the audio not working?
I don't
Maybe
know.
some of our other viewers can let us know if it's working or not. It appears to be for us, so I don't know if that is the case or not for everybody.
Yeah, if you guys can let us know, because I can hear you and it sounds like you can hear me.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks, though, for checking. Really appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Shauna, though. We have had
Definitely
some
had
technical issues.
technical
We had quite a few before we got on today. So thank you for checking in. We appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
And a big hello to Dana as well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So what do you guys think balance is? Let's, you're out there, and most of you on Facebook there. So just what do you think balance is about? What's your biggest challenge with balance? So that's, for me, it's time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my biggest challenge. So it tends to be like that for me. Like, how do I time management, basically, right? Making sure that I give some time to each thing. We were talking about how it doesn't have to be equal, but we still need to have the time to do things, So
Yeah.
So here's one. Shauna says, so being an all or nothing type of person makes balance hard. Indeed. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I tend to jump right in and get right in there with things. And you do tend to have to go back and kind of pick up those threads, right, as we go along. Dana says me time is one of her challenges. So yes, I can relate to that one too. Being an entrepreneur, I tend to be on the go doing all sorts of stuff for the businesses, which is a labor of love. I love my job. But it does create this time management for balance thing for me. I mean, you must run into that too, Jen, with your practice and everything.
It's interesting because, again, we talk about, and I'm going to go back to the human design piece because we're different, right? As the generator, you go. And that's right? You've got that defined sacral, you've got that energy, you can go. as a projector, I don't have a defined sacral. I don't make my own energy. So I'm very much more, I'm not going to go. It's okay. And so I struggle with balancing living with, generators and manifesting generators, and they're always go, go, go. And I'm not. And so balancing that becomes a challenge for me. But when it comes to business stuff, it's very much, this is all I can work. This is all I can put out. And I'm able to honor that a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when it comes to the people that are in my environment on a regular basis, I have trouble sometimes stepping back and saying, okay, I'm done. I can't put out any more energy for this right now.
Yeah. Well, and that's about boundaries and us putting in boundaries, right? Because I do get to my
Mhm.
point like that, of course, as any human being does. I get to a point I'm like, okay, I'm done for the day. I'm like, that's enough work for today, and have to
Yeah. Yeah.
move from there. So
Well,
I think we
I'm
just have all different thresholds depending on our
Yeah,
design.
I'm looking at, mm,
Lady
sorry, I had to get a
Annie.
little closer. Lady Annie's comment there about
Hmm.
just being scatterbrained and having a lot of projects on the go. And the immediate
Yeah,
thing that comes to
me
mind
too.
is that like manifestor energy, right? That's just like, I'm going to start this and I'm going to start that and I'm going to start this and then y'all can do that. And I'm going to just go about doing this and then I'm going to go do that. And right. And so it's again about finding that balance in what really matters to me and what do I really want to put that energy towards, right? What
Hmm.
can I commit to and maybe see to, completion, as that's not something that is generally balanced in, manifestor energy.
Yeah. Yeah, because we do. I mean, as much as we'd like to think um, we have an infinite amount of energy because we can source energy when we want to, right? But our bodies kind of need rest and recuperation, and so do our brains, and so we do need that. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, I have found the last few months I've needed more downtime. And so having to really kind of adjust how much I'm doing, and that requires adjusting your expectations of yourself too, um,
Yeah.
in order to accommodate those fluctuations, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think too, there's so much about transits and biorhythms and all of these different things that we go through. And as women, our energy changes on a monthly basis as well, right? And so
Yeah,
it's
I find.
understanding our flow, our own natural ebbs and flows of energy and of motivation. And, at one moment, it might be a lot stronger, and another moment, it might say, no, not today. And so it's honoring that part of our balance as well.
Mhm, mhm. Shauna says, being a caregiver provider makes it hard to balance energy, right? Trying to keep my
Hmm.
cup full so I can give what flows through me rather than of me. That's a good point. That's actually something that I talk about a lot in Reiki, in terms of when you're giving Reiki, making sure that you're just allowing it to flow, that you're the channel, not that you're giving that person Reiki, right? And it's the same with life. Can you have it flow through you so that you're not giving everything of yourself,
Yeah.
to go forward. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and being a caregiver, provider, the other piece of that is the expectation that others put on you, right?
yeah,
To
exactly.
do and to go. And so sometimes keeping that cup full is stepping away and saying, okay,
Yeah,
but I need this to recoup, or I need this to fill my cup, and being able to set that boundary and take that time, which can be really hard when there's a lot of expectation on you.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I think in the workplace that becomes an issue
Hmm.
as well, right? So making
Oh
sure
my
that
goodness.
you take your rest, take your breaks, take your lunch,
Uh-huh.
all of those things,
Yeah,
right?
the number of people that I, talk to that are like, I can't call in sick. I have to do this and I have to show up and it's just expected of me, and we start to look at, where do you think your value comes from? Where do you think that, your purpose is in this? What are you gaining by draining yourself so much, right? Because there's a function to all of these different behaviors. There's a purpose behind it. So what is going on for you that you feel that you need to empty yourself?
Oh,
You know?
yeah, I would say so, Shauna. So
Mm-hmm.
Shauna, it just says she was emotional
Yeah.
when we said step away. And that's, sometimes that's our programming or our conditioning. We get brought up with a lot of expectation on us, and we think that we have to do what everybody else needs, and we don't really. But especially as empaths, we think that we do, because if we don't, then we feel that person's disappointment or their pain or their whatever, and it just adds to us. So that it, yeah, I get it. Stepping away can be a challenge for sure, because we do have to balance that as well, because that takes from us. So how do we, and I think, I know, Shauna, we've talked about the tubing thing. So really tubing yourself so that you're not taking on or having people take your energy from you.
Yeah.
And then adjusting how you react or respond to things as well, right? If we can be that observer
Yeah.
instead of right into it.
Yeah, and Dana made a comment here about, finding 15 minutes, to meditate and focus on your breath, being grateful. And I think taking, even just a couple minutes, even just a minute,
Yeah.
to be able to step back, and, going back to the tubing piece and all, I think that as empaths, one of the biggest things that we have to learn is how to differentiate what is mine and what is not mine,
Yeah.
right? Because too often we own what's not ours.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we're not able to respond because we're in survival mode, because we're taking on energies, feelings, thoughts, all of these things that are not ours,
Yeah.
right? And so if, that stepping away piece is so important, and taking those minutes, as Dana said, to, breathe and all, and maybe taking that time to go, okay, what am I feeling right now? Where is it coming from?
Mm-hmm.
If it's mine, I can process it and I can deal with it. If it's not mine, I can let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Send it back with
And
love so that they can process it themselves.
yeah,
Because that's
yeah,
what we're here for, is to learn and process energy. And and so it's that accountability. So we're not accountable for everybody else's stuff. We're only accountable for our own. And so deciding what's ours and what's not is super important in that process.
yeah. Well, and also, I mean, we get into this, and especially this is more of a woman or female energy thing, in that not only do we feel it, but as the caregiver, we have to fix it. We have to take
Right.
care of it. We have to mend it. We have to make sure it's all okay. And so on the empath energy side, I have to make sure you're okay so I feel okay,
Yeah.
which it's actually kind of selfish. And I know I'm saying that, but it is, right? Because if we were able to sit in somebody else's discomfort and allow them their process, that's actually better for them. But because we're uncomfortable, we don't want to do that. We want to, fix it. And then on the caregiver side, I love you. I want to take care of you. I want to make you better. I want to make sure you're okay. Right. And so we have both of these things that are pulling on us to fix something. And then our energy goes there. And now again, we're out of balance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there's many layers to balance, and there's many layers to figuring out what is balance for us and what isn't, and energy is going to be a huge part in that, in sensing what's going on around us, what's ours and what isn't, even what's ours to do and what isn't. There's so many layers, that's just the word that keeps coming, to all of this.
And we think that we have to be there for everybody, right? We want to jump in and save them, but it's not about saving. It's about supporting. But support and save, people get them confused a little bit, you know. They think that support is actually doing something to help that person. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just being with the person and holding space while they go through the process. You know, but that's a tough thing for people to learn.
Yeah. And it's a tough thing to experience, especially when you're, when you have that empathetic connection, or you have any kind, of the clairs that allow you to see, sense, feel, whatever is going on, because in that moment, you're also experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's very that ability to say, okay, I can sit with this and not take it on and not own it and not make it mine, is going to be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a challenge to balance those, right?
Yeah. Well, and then we get into the labeling, right? Because the mind wants to judge and the mind wants to label. And I've determined that this particular feeling, emotion, thought, experience is bad. And this particular thought, feeling, emotion, experience is good. And then, as soon as we start to do that, we've decided what we want and what we don't want in our experience. And it's no longer just an experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that judgment thing, right? Doing the self-judgment or the judgment of the situation.
Yeah.
So, and each experience is unique for each person. So, when we tend to judge others for those things too, then we're really kind of stepping over a line, because we don't know what their experience is. So that judgment thing becomes a challenge for everybody then, really.
Yeah.
We make, a lot of times we make our lives and those around us, we make them difficult because we judge, right? I mean, we have to have some kind of framework, I guess, being in society. But if we can be a little bit more flexible with our perception of things, right?
Yeah,
then that would be helpful. Hi, Kylie.
Really...
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. I mean, every experience that we have happens in our mind first, right? And I know I've talked about this before, where we go into the filing cabinet and we, kind of go, oh, what is this like? What does this experience remind me of? Right? And then we have all of these things all these lenses that we kind of put on to see the experience through, right? And so again, coming back to balance, can we remove those lenses? Can we have each experience as a brand new experience? Can we see it in a brand new way?
Mm-hmm.
Can we allow for, openness and curiosity and gratitude and all of those things to come into place, so that even if we have an experience that maybe we've labeled as, not the greatest or not something that we really want, can we look at it from a new light and find what we need to gain from it, right? Because that's, again, bringing us back into balance. What do I want from this? Where do I want to go from here? Right? What kind of experience do I want to make for myself moving forward?
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to that spiritual journey, right? The know thyself. Really, delving into, and I think the other thing that's really changeable in all of that is, one day you might want one thing and the next day you want something totally different, and it's okay to do that. But we judge ourselves for not being open-minded, for being too flexible, or feeling like we're all over the place, because one day we want chocolate, the next day we want vanilla. But that could be anything that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, definitely. But what's beautiful is, like, we can get into this moment where it's like, again, this cycle that we tend to go on, right? And it's about our patterns and all of that. And we'll say, okay, yeah, I want this. And then it's like, no, I actually want this. And then it's like, oh, here I go again, changing my, right? And so now we're back to judgments. And it's like, okay, I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open. I'm judgmental again. I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open. I'm judgmental again.
But I think it's very much part of the human psyche, right, to do that.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, and I talk about this with my clients all the time, is it's just about awareness.
Mm-hmm.
How aware are you of your processes? How aware are you of your judgments? Right? At any
Mm-hmm.
given moment, are you present with you and with what's going on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, that's the real balance.
So Annie says being open-minded instead of sudden judgments. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If we could all strive for that, I think we would find more balance.
Mm-hmm.
But it is that awareness. I mean, how often, you talked about those automatic processes that our brain goes through. I mean, how often do we just go through processes and we don't even realize what's happening?
Yeah.
And I think that's more that awake state that that we talk about, when we're more awake of what's happening. Then that's a factor in there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Again, the analogy between the awake and asleep, right? And what that really means, it's, when we're asleep, we're not necessarily aware of what's going on. We're not aware of maybe the processes and stuff. I mean, unless you're doing lucid dreaming and stuff like that, but that's a whole other thing.
That's another whole thing.
Um, but, but then the awake state is that awareness piece. And it's ultimately, that's the only thing that really makes that difference, is that ability to be aware of what's actually happening and then moving from that place of awareness, right? As opposed to in a dream, we could be doing one thing and then all of a sudden we're somewhere else, and then all of a sudden we're somewhere else. And there's really that lack of control and movement and directing. And that's kind of how, when we're asleep, how we live our life. We're
Mm-hmm.
just in our programming, going with it, the treadmill, like they said in the card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And, there's just this kind of dullness to it because there is no direction. We're just spinning our wheels. We're not really aware. We're not present. But that awareness and that presence, man, takes you right off the treadmill.
It does, once you start to tap into that, right?
Yeah.
And
And it
then,
doesn't mean it's easy. And it doesn't
no,
mean that, it's without its problems, but
of course.
it's an amazingly new and different experience, and a very rewarding one if you're willing to see it through.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I think that we have covered the topic of balance. We could go on all day, but we've we are up at 6:30, so I think we've done our time for the day. But well, please come back again next week, guys. We had a few glitches this time, so we were a little bit later than getting on. Catherine has a question for you before we go. Miss Human Design.
Oh, does our human design help us to achieve balance? Yes.
Absolutely.
So the whole idea behind human design is to know our own unique design and to give ourselves permission to live that, to understand who we are at the core of our being and what we're here for, and not trying to fit the mold that everybody else wants us to be in. Right? It looks at our conditioning and it looks at all of the different shoulds that we have that kind of take over, and that we just, we live on a day-to-day basis and we don't even realize the control that they have, right? And so it gives us permission to really honor and love who we uniquely are.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jen does human design readings and stuff, or not readings, what would you call them?
Yeah, I don't do the full like analyst readings that are like, that's a whole other
Understanding.
thing.
You
But I
lead to
do
understanding.
introductory guides to human design, and I use it from a spiritual path kind of perspective.
Okay. Awesome. So reach out to Jen if you have more questions about human design. It's fascinating. It's quite funny. We did our human design because Jen and I work a lot together, and we found that we really balance each other in many ways. It was kind of funny to see it all together. It was kind of cool. It's like a compatibility thing that she did, so it was a lot of fun to see. So yeah. So it's a fascinating thing. Dana says, understanding your body is everything. You're truly amazing. Yeah, the body definitely gives us our messaging in many ways, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? We think that the mind is in control of everything, and we just let the mind do its thing because that's all we are taught, right? That's what the world teaches us in our conditioning. And then with human design, we learn that our authority, our decision-making tool is actually not our mind, but for each of us it's something different. And so when we learn what that is, we learn to honor that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can, make decisions based on our true authority. And it's a whole new world in how we show up and what we decide to do and what we decide not to do, what we're willing to own and what we're willing to let go of, because it's more true to who we are and it just feels right.
Yeah. And that's what balance is.
Mm-hmm.
When it feels right and everything feels right is when you have balance, and it's right for you, right? Not for your neighbor, not for your family, but it's right for you and what that works in. So my message for the end of the show is, please do not shoot yourselves to death. Right?
Yes, definitely. Get rid of those shoulds.
Yeah.
I have 2 bracelets and I wear them often, and it's, one, and they're the quotes I love, right? Is know thyself, and then
Yep.
to thine own self be true. And
Yes.
to truly be there for another, to truly show up in a way that is authentic and that is valuable for the other, is to be true to who you are.
Absolutely. So feel into your hearts and know thyself all. Okay. And it was great to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your beautiful insights. We appreciate you sharing your energy with us today. And we will be back next week. So please come back and see us. And
With a
we're
special
sending.
guest, right?
Oh, we are having a special guest next week. This is right. So we do have a special guest coming next week. Her name is Angela Day. She is actually from Scotland, and I think you're going to really like her. So come back and join us for more authentic conversation next week. And I am Tanis Coughlin from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, the Twillow Lifestyle Academy. And
I am Jennifer Jurkofsky, and I'm also with Twillow Lifestyle, and you can also find me on My Holistic Self.
thank you all for sharing your energy. Sending you all lots of love. Lots of
Lots
love.
of love.